Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section, I quickly run with you the ophthalmic nerve. Now get to know that the ophthalmic nerve is actually the first division of the trigeminal nerve. Now, of course, we know that the trigeminal nerve is the fifth cranial nerve emerging from the ventral aspect of the pons. And it's going to have three divisions. The first division being the ophthalmic nerve, the one we are going to do today. The second division being the maxillary nerve. And of course, the third division being, of course, the mandibular nerve. Already, we reviewed that of the mandibular nerve. So please, if you've not watched that video, please go to my playlist, the head and neck region, and of course, get this nerve and watch. But today, it's all about the ophthalmic nerve. And whenever you hear the word ophthalmology or ophthalmic, it has to do with, of course, the orbit, the eye. Okay, eventually go into the eye and supply it. So you see that this nerve will have to go through, the orbit through what we call the superior orbital fascia. And it will give us some important branches, which of course we are going to look at today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, studies have shown that this nerve is actually, a purely, sensory nerve. So at the end of this section, we'll be able to see the course, okay, what we have to know, how the nerve will be running, okay, over there, as well as, of course, looking at the major branches and what they are supplying, okay, in the head region. And so, without much ado, let's set the ball rolling. So there we are, schematic representation of the nerve and its course, whatever is going to supply is over here. Now, one important thing is that, yes, we have this ganglion, okay, which we call it the trigeminal ganglion, okay, and emerging from a trigeminal ganglion, we have the three divisions of the ophthalmic, of the what we call the trigeminal nerve. And what are these nerves? Yes, we need that the first one, the V1, okay, is what we call the ophthalmic nerve. Then the second one is the maxillary nerve, and of course, the third one being, of course, the mandibular nerve. Now, one important thing that I want to show you over here is that let me just give you a bit of orientation so that you get whatever. Now, this is the eyeball, okay? Now, on the superlateral aspect, okay, of the eyeball, of the orbit, I see this gland over here, and that's the lacrimal gland, okay? Superlateral aspect of the orbit, I see the lacrimal gland, okay? So please get to know that one. I say superlateral, so it means more external, and it's also very close to the, upper aspect, so superlateral aspect. So it means that as I come to the opposite aspect, I'm going to the medial aspect, and as I even come down, I'm going to the inframedial aspect of the eyeball. So please, with this, I will be able to tell you certain things so that you follow whatever I'm doing. So this is the nerve, this is the ophthalmic nerve, okay, emerging from what you call the supromedial. My friend, is the supromedial aspect of this ganglion, which you call it the trigeminal ganglion. Okay, we have this ophthalmic, nerve. Now, one important thing that I want you to know is that this nerve, it wants to enter the orbit, it wants to go towards where the eyeball is. But my friends, before it goes there, it has to go through what we call a fascia, okay, which we call the superior orbital fascia. But one important thing I want to remind you, yes, already I've done a video on the cardinal sinus and its relations. One important relation that we find with the cardinal sinus is that related to the lateral wall of the cardinal sinus, okay, is this ophthalmic nerve. So it means this ophthalmic nerve, yes, will run, okay, along what we call the lateral wall of the cardinal sinus, forwards, okay, towards what we call the orbit. And then it wants to enter the orbit through a fascia, which we call it the superior orbital fascia. My friends, before it enters the superior orbital fascia, it divides, giving rise to these three branches, okay, these three branches of the nerve. And what are these three branches? And that is what we call the NLF branches, the NLF branches. And what is this NLF branches? The N is for the nasociliary nerve, okay, the L is for the lacrimal nerve, because at the end of the day, you can see this nerve going to the superlateral aspect of the orbit, okay, to supply, okay, the lacrimal gland. And this nerve, this ophthalmic nerve, continues, okay, in the middle, okay, and gives rise to what we call the frontal nerve. The F is for frontal nerve, okay, that is what we see. So I'm going to take them one after the other and explain these terms to you. So the first one is the nasociliary nerve. Now I told you that it's going to enter the orbit through what we call the superior orbital fascia. But my friends, I told you that as I come this way, I'm coming to the superior aspect. As I come this way, I'm coming to the inferior aspect. So it tells me that this nasociliary nerve will enter the orbit through the inferior aspect of what we call the superior orbital fascia. Okay, superior orbital fascia. And my friends, one thing that we find over here is that it is topographically connected to one of the parasympathetic ganglia that we have in the head region. That is what we call the ciliary ganglion. Now, as you can see, there will be some short ciliary nerves emerging, coming out of this, ciliary ganglion. And my friend, these short ciliary, nerves, okay, what they are going to do is that they are going to, give that kind of secretomotor fibers, okay, give that kind of parasympathetic innervation to, of course, the ciliary muscle, as well as, of course, the sphincter pupillary, muscle. So that is what we find over here. But my friends, one thing that I want to tell you over here is that you can see that this nerve crosses, okay, after giving off the dark ganglion where it's related to it, emerging from that side, I see this nerve crossing over this, this nerve, which is a very thick nerve, taking, of course, the visual information from the retina to the what we call the optic centers, okay, to the visual cortex of the brain in the occipital lobe. Okay, this nerve is known as the optic nerve. So one important relation that we find over here with the nasociliary nerve is that it is crossing, okay, superficially over what you call this guy, what you call the optic, nerve. Then my friends, it will run forward. As you can see, it will run forward, but there are some nerves, there are some muscles. One thing that we know is that apart from this kind of sphincter pupillary, dilator pupillary, ciliaris muscle, there are extraocular muscles, and those extraocular muscles, yes, they take attachment on what we call the sclera of the eyeball. Yes, so what it means is that, as I told you, I said there's a superior lateral aspect, and this, as I come this way, I'm coming to the medial aspect and even lower aspect. Now I see that there will be one muscle over here, although not shown over here, and that muscle is what we call the medial rectus muscle. Medial rectus muscle, because this is the medial aspect. So one relation that we also find, apart from this, nasociliary nerve running over the optic nerve, we also see that this continuation of this nasociliary nerve, yes, it passes over what we call the medial rectus muscle. Once it passes over the medial rectus muscle, then it gives off these branches, and one of these branches is what we call the posterior ethmoidal nerve. Posterior ethmoidal nerve. Now, my friends, the name is nasociliary nerve. The ciliary component is because one of the reasons is that it is topographically connected to the ciliary ganglion. No problem. Now, the naso is the fact that it is giving a branch. Okay. Now you know that one of the weakest area, weak bones that we have in the skull, of course, that will be the the cribriform plate of the ethmoid. Okay, so the ethmoid over there, okay, we have going to have these kind of air cells. We have the posterior air cells supplied by what we call the posterior ethmoidal nerve. Posterior ethmoidal nerve. So the nasal portion, one of the reasons is that it's going to supply the posterior ethmoidal nerve cells. Air cells actually, through what we call the posterior ethmoidal nerve. But my friends, it is not only the posterior, ethmoidal air cells that this posterior ethmoidal nerve will supply, because it is also very close to what we call the sphenoidal air cells, the air sinus. Then what will happen is that this posterior ethmoidal cells, nerve will also supply what we call the sphenoidal air sinus. Okay, that is one important thing that I want you to know. Okay, now, then, as the nerve continues, it gives off this branch, okay, which one of the terminal branches that we find, okay, of the nasociliary nerve. It is the anterior ethmoidal nerve. Anterior ethmoidal nerve. My friends, this anterior ethmoidal nerve, yes, essentially it's going to supply, of course, you talk about the anterior and of course the middle ethmoidal air cells. Yes, it's going to give that kind of supply to it. But my friend, it will also go to what we call, go and give some branches, okay, sensory supply to what we call the dura mater in the cranial cavity. So dura mater will also be supplied by, of course, the anterior ethmoidal, nerve cells. Yes, not only that, it will terminate, okay, by giving rise to some branches, okay, to supply the skin over the tip of the nose, okay. That is what we find over there, okay. So from the anterior ethmoidal, nerve, okay, is supplying the anterior middle, of course, ethmoidal air cells. It's also going to supply the mucosa in the nasal region, okay, above over there. Then it's going to supply what we call the dura mater, okay, in there. But it will terminate, okay, by giving some sensory supply to the skin over the tip of the nose over there. Okay, so that is what we see. But my friends, one other nerve that it gives is what we call the infratrochlear nerve. Infratrochlear nerve. Yes, it also give some branches supply, of course, this kind of external nose area. Okay, that is what we see. But one important thing, which we also call it nasociliary nerve, the nasal component, apart from being related to what we call the ciliary ganglion. Okay, the reason why we are calling this nasociliary nerve is that it also gives a branch. Okay, usually about 2 or 3. Now this one I can see 2 of them over here, and those nerves are what we call the long ciliary nerves. Now I told you that emerging from what we call the ciliary ganglion will be the short ciliary nerves. And the short ciliary nerves, they are giving parasympathetic supply to the intrinsic muscles of the eye. Talking about, of course, the sphincter pupillae and of course the ciliaris muscle. Okay, but giving carrying the parasympathetic fibers, okay, to the to the iris, okay, over the parasympathetic, so that I supply what you call dilated pupillae. Is this guy. Is the long ciliary nerves, about 2 or 3 that we find over there. But you can also see that one important relation is that they also cross, okay, superficial on what we call the optic, nerve. Okay, so that is what I want you to know regarding what we call the nasociliary nerve. So what have you seen? The nasociliary nerve, yes, it will be topographically connected to what we call the ciliary ganglion. Then from there it crosses what we call the optic nerve. Then it immediately gives what we call the long ciliary nerves, okay, going to carry what we call the sympathetic fibers, okay, to what we call the dilated pupillae. Then we said that yes, this nerve continues, it crosses, yes, towards what we call the medial rectus, okay, muscle. Then it of course gives this branch, which is the posterior ethmoidal nerve. It also gives anterior ethmoidal nerve. Then of course it terminates by giving this guy, which is the infratrochlear nerve. And I told you that even the external tip of the external nose will be giving some supply to these guys. So that is what we call the nasociliary nerve. Now the next nerve that we look at is what we call the lacrimal nerve. Lacrimal nerve. My friends, as I told you that lacrimal nerve will also pass through what we call the superior orbital fascia. But my friends, the catch here is that this nerve, okay, will be joined by one other nerve, which will be a connection between what we call the maxillary nerve and of course this this ophthalmic nerve, okay. And that nerve is what we call the zygomaticotemporal nerve. So there's a connection, and I will explain when we look at the secretomotor pathway of the lacrimal gland why this connection is important. Because at the end of the day, through the pterygoparietal ganglion, yes, the fibers, postganglionic fibers, will have to travel through this zygomaticotemporal nerve, yes, eventually through this lacrimal gland to supply lacrimal nerve to supply this lacrimal gland. So we see this complete pathway when we look at the secretomotor pathway of the lacrimal gland. My friends, so we are looking at what we call the lacrimal nerve. And my friends, this lacrimal nerve, as you can see, it will be emergent through what we call the superior aspect, okay, of what we call the superior orbital fascia. Okay, superior aspect of the superior orbital fascia. And my friends, it will pass through the upper border, okay, it will pass, superficial to what we call the upper border of lateral rectus muscle. Now I told you that this nasolacrimal nerve will pass superficial through what we call the medial rectus muscle. So passing on the upper border of the superior of what we call the lateral rectus muscle, okay, because I told you that this lacrimal gland is located on the superolateral aspect of the orbit. So it means passing through the superolateral, the upper border of what we call the lateral rectus muscle will be this lacrimal nerve. So that is an important thing that we want to know. And my friends, it will be joined by this important nerve, which is an important connection between the maxillary nerve and of course this lacrimal nerve of what we call the ophthalmic nerve. And that nerve is called zygomaticotemporal nerve. A very important connection over here. We will explain into detail later. And then eventually through that kind of fibers which will supply what we call the lacrimal gland. Okay, so that is one thing that we want you to know over here. Now the other nerve, which is actually a continuation, okay, forward continuation of this ophthalmic nerve, okay, is what we call the frontal nerve. So the frontal nerve, after giving rise to this nasociliary and of course the lacrimal nerve, it continues, okay. It also passes through of course the middle aspect of this superior orbital fascia, okay, and then it continues, okay, to the orbit area. And as you can see over here, because the continuation of it is actually the thickest as far as these three main divisions, these main three branches of the ophthalmic nerve is concerned. Okay, so that is what we have to know. But one important thing is that this one will also be passing, above another muscle. So I can see that, yes, we said that necessary nerve will be passing above what muscle? It will be passing on top of this muscle, which we are calling it, the medial rectus muscle. Then we said the frontal, lacrimal nerve will be passing above what we call lateral rectus. And then this frontal nerve will also be passing above one of the extraocular muscles. And my friends, that one is the one which is related to the upper eyelid. And that is what we call the superior, levator palpebrae superioris. Okay, that is what we see. But immediately once it passes above it, it gives us these two branches. And these two branches, one of them, okay, the smaller one, which is going toward the medial aspect. Now remember, I said this gland is towards the lateral aspect, superolateral aspect. So it means that if there's a branch of this frontal nerve, it's going toward the medial aspect. And that's the nerve which we call the supratrochlear nerve. So in the orbit, okay, imagine from the lateral, so from the wall of the orbit, if you are taking an anterior view to closer to the medial contours, okay, where that area, we have this nerve emerging from there. And my friend, that nerve is called what you call supratrochlear nerve. Well, it will pass through what we call supratrochlear notch, which is not very prominent. And then apart from that, there's one other nerve, okay, which is, a bit medial. A bit lateral. So we can see that this medial one, a smaller one, and continuation of this frontal nerve, okay, will give rise to the larger one, which we call it the supraorbital nerve. And my friends, you know it already. If you look at the osteology of the skull, okay, the frontal bone, you see the supraorbital notch or supraorbital foramen over there. This nerve will be running, above it. Will be running through it. Okay, that is what we see. And as you can see, what are they going to do? They are going to give that to supply the upper eyelid, okay, branches to conjunctiva, and as well as, the upper eyelid. Okay, that is what we see. But my friends, one other thing that we see is that this guy over here, which is of course the supratrochlear nerve, will also give some branches, okay, to supply what we call the frontal air sinus. Okay, so that is what we see over here. So my friends, that is essentially what you have to know about this ophthalmic nerve, which is the first division of the trigeminal nerve. So in summary, emerging from what we call the supromedial aspects of this ganglion, which is the trigeminal ganglion, I see the first division, which is of course the ophthalmic nerve. And this ophthalmic nerve, as I said, is the smallest division. It's a purely sensory nerve. And what it's going to do is that it's going to give off 3 branches before entering, okay, the supraorbital fascia. And what are these 3 branches? I said we are going to have what we call the nasociliary nerve, okay, running up the lower aspect. Okay, then of course, running up upper aspect, I have what we call this, lacrimal nerve. And then continuing from it, that's the thickest of these 3 nerves, will be the frontal nerve. I said nasociliary nerve will be topographically, connected to what we call the ciliary ganglion. Yes, it will also give off these branches, which will, of course, they will run on what we call the optic nerve, which will be, of course, 2 or 3, long ciliary nerves. I told that short ciliary nerves will be coming from what we call the ciliary ganglion, okay, to supply, give parasympathetic supply to what we call the ciliary muscle, as well as, of course, the sphincter pupillae. I told that dilated pupillae, yes, will be supplied by sympathetic, and to be carried, the fibers will be carried through the long ciliary nerves. Okay, now one thing that we find is that this ciliary nerve, yes, will give off what we call the posterior ethmoidal nerve. And the posterior ethmoidal nerve will supply the posterior ethmoidal air cells. Not only that, even the middle ethmoidal air cells alongside the sphenoidal air sinus. That's very important that you should know that the sphenoidal air sinus is supplied by what? Supplied by what we call the posterior ethmoidal nerve. Then, as we said, yes, we also have what we call the anterior ethmoidal nerve. And the anterior ethmoidal nerve, yes, will supply, of course, the anterior air cells, okay, that we find over there. Yes, it will also give off that kind of supply to the dura mater. The nasal mucosa will be supplied, and then to terminate by giving this branch to the tip of the nose externally. Okay, so that is what we find over here. So that is what we see. Then apart from that, we also said that there will be what we call the lacrimal nerve. Essentially, lacrimal nerve will be joined by what we call the zygomaticotemporal nerve, okay, so that we give that kind of parasympathetic supply through what we call the ptericopalatal ganglion, okay, to supply what we call the lacrimal gland actually. So that is what we see. Then the frontal nerve, which is the thickest nerve, yes, it stays, okay. And one important thing that I want you to know is that if you talk about the nasophysial nerve, yes, we said that it is related to what we call the medial rectus muscle. Okay, runs above it, then run above the lateral rectus, okay, will be the lacrimal nerve. But running above what you call the levator palpebrae superioris will be the frontal nerve. Okay, then it's of course going to give that kind of branches, which will of course be the supratrochlear nerve, or of course supraorbital nerve. But remember that infratrochlear nerve will be coming from this nasocerial nerve. Okay, so that is what I want you to actually know over here. And as I said, by way of an important relation, this first division of the trigeminal nerve will be related to what we call the lateral wall of the cardinal sinus. Okay, so that is an important bit that I want you to know over here. I hope you find it helpful. Do make a date with me so that we look at the second division of the trigeminal nerve in our next meeting. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.